I come now to this third section, which is postmodern soldiers. And these stories reveal to us very much the inner workings, if there are any, really, of the postmodern soldier. And there are times when you have to wonder, sort of like, what is there any inside? Like when you see American Sniper, you're like, is there a full human being inside there, or is this sort of like an empty shell with a couple of beans rattling around? It isn't that the soldier doesn't have thoughts or moving parts, but it all seems terribly exposed, I think, as if full exposure is sort of the operating rule of postmodern war, that you're transparent. You become a transparent being. You are all information. You are all transparent. And Kovite says, and you wonder if thinking about whether you're a wartime cliche prevents you from becoming or being a wartime cliche. So this is a quintessential postmodern moment where you're like, I wonder if because I'm meta, I won't be killed. It's like, no, irony isn't going to protect you. So the soldier is fully aware of his or her role as a potential sacrifice, which is what Harper kept saying in Canada, the ultimate sacrifice. The ultimate sacrifice for what these soldiers basically see as being a completely meaningless war, which was a lie from the beginning and didn't improve after that. I mean, it's not as though, because the Bush White House lied to get soldiers into the field, that it improved once they got in the field. It's like, no, actually, the dying just got worse. I mean, people just went on dying, and the civilians started getting killed. So nonetheless, these ironies will not prevent the original bad story from playing out. That is, you're going to still, soldiers are still going to get maimed and die and get killed for a lousy cause, or one that the country doesn't agree with, or when you get home, people are like, why did you go? What were you thinking? And you're like, what do you mean? What was I thinking? I'm supporting my country. It's tough to make a direct connection between what you're doing right now and the peace and prosperity of your hometown of Riverside, says Kovite. But it's no surprise, because global security is all about action that's collective as well as synergistic, as far as you understand it. So it's a wonderful sort of use of knowledge about basically the way that the military talks about its global security. We're not just here fighting in Iraq because of Iraq. We're fighting in Iraq because of global security. It's all about action that's collective as well as synergistic. It's like, oh God, it's this thing. The people who wrote this stuff actually went to business school and marketing school for that, and then that's handed off to the soldiers. Like, what am I doing here? It's, well, you're engaged in collective and synergistic struggles. You're like, what? What does that mean? So it's just straight up jargon from the technosphere. And what difference does it make whether the soldier is aware of these things or not if they get killed or terribly wounded? So there's no lack of irony. And if there's one thing about this writing, which you don't see as much in the Vietnam writings, is that everybody is aware of being potentially in an ironic situation from the beginning. And this is something that Paul Fussell argued about World War I literature that came out during World War I while it was on. That he said, basically marked the end of Romanticism, which is often claimed that was, and it's a reasonable claim, that this was the end of Romanticism and the beginning of modernism in World War I. And it's marked by these authors who write these incredibly brutal, ironic poems, and mostly poetry, which is amazing. You don't get that so much in Vietnam. The poems, yes. The fiction, not so much. They tend to be sort of straight up stories about guys coming home and having a terrible time. And they're not so ironic. There are a number. The ones that basically are probably the most famous are the ones that are the most astute about sort of the position of the narrator is in. Reflexive. On the other hand, says Kovite, there are things you know you don't know, and things you don't know you don't know. And as long as you're crouched down, you're not watching the Convoy 6, which is this is on page 160. So you need to know a few terms here. First of all, I'm gonna show you a little clip from about the known knowns and the unknown knowns. And this comes straight from Rumsfeld, who appears to be this sort of he sort of appears to be intelligent at times, but really he's got the sort of bargain basement intelligence, what I think of as sort of, I don't know, the kind of intelligence you find with some guy who's playing chess in the library or something like that, or out on the street. These people who play chess sort of at these public chessboards, and they're fast and they're quick, but they don't actually understand chess very well. They know how to play a fast game, and they know how to rattle the opponent and get a kill, but otherwise they're not really thoughtful at all, and they actually don't have anything in their heads except this sort of series of mechanical moves. Rumsfeld is kind of like that. But anyway, he comes up with this thing about, there are known knowns, things we know, and unknown knowns, things we don't know that we know, and so on. So here's Zizek riffing on this in his typical Zizekian way. So, enjoy, as they say. I don't say that, I guess I will say that ironically. Enjoy.
There are reports that there is no evidence of a direct link between Baghdad and some of these terrorist organizations.
There are known knowns. There are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things we do not know. But there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know, we don't know.
Excuse me, but is this an unknown unknown?
I'm not.
Several unknowns, and I'm just wondering if this is an unknown.
I'm not going to say which it is.
Let me refer to a recent paradoxical statement by none other than Donald Rumsfeld. I think that this statement was an important contribution to contemporary American philosophical debate. This happened in March 2003, just before the war on Iraq, where Rumsfeld elaborated the relationship between known and unknown. First, he said there are known knowns. There are things we know that we know, like we knew at that point that Saddam was the president of Iraq. Okay, everything clear. Then he went on, there are known unknowns. There are things that we know that we don't know. The idea was, for example, we know that we don't know how many weapons of mass destruction Saddam has. Okay, now we know he had none. Doesn't matter. At that point, it appeared like this. Then there is the unknown unknown. Things we don't know that we don't know. Things which are so foreign, so unimaginable that we even don't know that we don't know. For example, maybe Saddam had some unimaginable, totally unexpected weapon. And here, unfortunately, Rumsfeld stopped, because I think he should have gone on, making the next step to the fourth category, fourth variation which is missing, which is not the known unknowns, but the unknown knowns. Things we don't know, we know them. We know them, they are part of our identity, they determine our activity, but we don't know that we know them. This is what in psychoanalysis, of course, is called unconscious. Unconscious fantasies, unconscious prejudices, and so on and so on. And I think that this level is crucial. To refer to previous two examples from movies, in The Sound of Music, what we directly know is that it's a movie about anti-fascist resistance of modest, honest Austrians. What we don't know that we know is that it's also the opposite. That is the movie about fascists resisting the Jewish takeover. And the tragedy of today's American politics, I think, is that precisely they are not aware of this unknown knowns, which is why there was a deep truth in one of the statements of that unfortunate Iraqi Minister of Information. We were all laughing at him during the last Iraqi war because of his ridiculous statements denying the obvious. But at one point, I claim what he told was absolutely true. When, towards the end of the war, he was asked, is it true that Americans already control, American forces, part of the Baghdad airport? He said, Not true. Americans don't control even themselves. Perfect truth. Why? Because they don't know what they know. And this, what you don't know that you know, controls you, but you don't control it.